I remember times when he would just fuck off in a critical moment and let us just leave us in the shit to solve the problem. And then the problem's like 99% of the way solved. And he'd come in and be like, okay, guys, how can I help now? And it's like, well, we've already done, we already ecoed the shit out of this problem.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpra.
Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome to the Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. And today we're going to discuss the foundations of leadership. Before we get into this topic, please support the show by checking the links in the bottom. Also, if you can, just take a moment to hit like, share, subscribe, leave a review whenever you can, leave a comment wherever you can. Really helps me grow the show. Thank you all for the support. So, the foundations of leadership. I've done a couple of podcasts before on leadership. If you check out my online academy, there's a section for audio lectures, and I discuss leadership and my role as a gym owner, and there's lots of references to the culinary arts. But I wanted to do an episode for this show so that I can give my take on this topic. Now, just a quick background for me as a leader in the careers that I've had. Obviously, as you know, I own a gym. I've taken on a leadership role by being a gym owner, whether you want to or not. If you're a gym owner, you're in some way a leader. But also in the culinary arts, I had leadership roles before I switched my career over to martial arts. So I've led kitchen teams. I've never been a head chef of a kitchen, but I've been a first cook where I've led kitchen teams to do banquets and ran the line for many years at hotels downtown in Vancouver. Which is a highly stressful situation. And in those types of situations, if you're in like a first cook position, you're always going to take on the role of a leader. You're not going to be the leader of the kitchen, but you might oversee a team of people to execute a specific party or a specific time frame where specific service, right? So I have a lot of experience with leading people. And of course, just with my job that I have nowadays, I'm going to discuss a lot of the concepts and the ideas that I use to lead my team every day and to run my business. So get down. Don't be surprised if my goddamn cat jumps up during this entire episode. So let's just discuss the idea of what is a leader. A leader is somebody that is going to be running a team and trying to execute a mission. And this is a very interesting idea, having a mission. It's something that I got from Nick Castilia and Sam Hadelstad from Legacy Martial Arts Consulting when I was on their show and they were on my show. And the idea of the mission coming first is an idea that I got from them. And this is the idea that the overall mission or the vision that you might have as a leader comes before every one person in the group. And when you're owning a business or running an operation, if the people who are involved in your operation do not align their goals with the mission, then essentially they can be detrimental to the team. And that's a situation where you might have to look at removing those people, unfortunately, which can be very, very uncomfortable. And we're going to discuss, dealing with difficult people in uncomfortable situations later on in the show. But not everybody is a leader. You have to ask yourself, do you have natural leadership qualities? I think it's a fair thing to say that being a leader is often instinctual, and it's not really something that can be taught to somebody who doesn't have those leader instincts. For me, I always knew when I started my culinary arts career that teaching cooking was something that was very, very interesting to me. And I just had this natural urge to teach. Whether it was cooking or martial arts, something that I was passionate about. I always found that the sharing of information and helping other people improve in that same field that I was interested in was a huge interest to me. And so I started aligning my goals from a very young part of my cooking journey to being a culinary arts instructor. And that was kind of what I wanted to do. My best times in the industry were actually at cooking school. That was where I really, really fell in love with the culinary arts. And I really became infatuated with the industry. And then I saw these older chefs that were on the verge of retirement teaching in the culinary arts at the community college that I was going to. And I was like, man, I think that job would be really cool. I really wanted to do that. And then later on, as I went through the career of cooking, I became a little bit more jaded, and I realized this industry was not the one that I was, so much in love with. After all, I was falling more in love with jiu-jitsu, but I was really, really interested in that type of field. And I always had those leadership qualities where I would just love teaching cooking. And like I said, these qualities are like pretty instinctual. People either want to be leaders or they don't really. Well, it's fine to not be a leader, and not everyone wants to lead a team. A lot of people just want to play a role as a cog in a machine to achieve a particular mission. And that's absolutely fine. But when you are the leader, I think it's really, really important to identify potential leaders around you, because within your group of people that you're overlooking, there will be people with leadership qualities, people who step up and can, sort of take control of a bad situation, or people who are very good at problem solving, people who are very good with managing people and managing systems. Those are the type of people that you kind of want to nurture as a leader and give them the ability to start leading. And that can really, really help you in the room. As your operations grow, let's say you own a business and you identify that certain people within your business have those leadership qualities. I would recommend that you start to nurture those qualities and start to put the bug in their ear about becoming a leader, because as your operations grow, you will need help. And then this way, if you have people who are leaders around you, it can kind of be homegrown leaders as opposed to like hiring help from outside of your circle. So if you're hiring within and promoting within, a lot of the time people will have more of a sense of ownership, and they'll take pride in being a leader for you because they're coming up under you. So recognizing and nurturing natural leaders around you is one of the best things I think a leader can do. So back to the mission. When I spoke with Sam and Nick, we talked about the mission coming first. And if you're having issues working with people in your operation, I use the word operation because for me, it's a martial arts business, but it could be a restaurant. It could be, an office where you're overlooking a bunch of people. You might have a cafe or something where there's people working under you. Any situation where you have people working under you, I'm just going to refer to it as an operation. And when I spoke to these Nick and Sam about a mission, if you're dealing with people who can, cause difficulty and causing issues for you on a personal, social level within your operation, it might be time to remove those people because they are not falling in line with the mission. It's super critical that everybody who's on the mission understands what the vision is, what the mission is, and we all align goals toward that mission so that everybody's on the same page. If you have a bunch of people that you're leading and they don't believe in the mission or they don't see the importance of your mission, that's when, you're going to start to have issues because people are not aligned. And then this is a situation where, these people need to be assessed and adjusted. If they can't be adjusted to align with the mission, it might be time to remove them because really the mission does come first. And in my case, for a martial arts business, the mission is, it's all the things that you hear about when you think about a good gym. It's having high level jiu-jitsu, a place where anyone can train, where people feel welcome, where people try and lift each other up. No one student takes priority over the other student. And obviously, it has to be profitable. It has to be financially beneficial for me, the owner, because it's my business. So that's my mission. And yeah, like I said earlier, the team mission has to come before the desire or the will of like any one individual on the team. So if I was let's say I was working in a kitchen and my chef says, I want this dish done this specific way. I want operations to run a specific way. And then me as a cook, somebody lower on the totem pole under my chef, if I start to say, no, I don't like that. I like things this way. And that's just the way that I like it, or that's the way that I believe it to be done. It doesn't really matter the way that I believe it to be done because I am not the boss and it's not my mission. My goal as a cog in the machine is to fulfill my part in the mission, to see the importance of the mission and to believe in it. And if I start going against it because I feel it should go a different way, then that's where I'm actually starting to cause a rift within the team. I can start to go against my own leader, and that can start to become a real big issue for the mission and how the team functions as a cohesive unit. As a leader, you must read the room. So this is a really, really important aspect of, really becoming I don't want to use the word family because it is kind of a culty way that jiu-jitsu teams sell their business. Oh, we're a family or whatever. But it is true. We do build relationships with these people. Often the times when you're at an operation or your place of work, you're going to see these people more than you might even see your family. And this is super, super common for many different trades. In fact, I would say most people probably spend more time with the people they work with than their family, unfortunately. And so it's important to get to know these people, to build relationships with these people, at the very least, learning their names. And I'm bad for this. It is not an easy thing to learn, several hundred people's names, especially when you got new people coming in all the time. But learning the names of your clients and your customers and your employees is it's a skill, and it's a very, very underrated, very valuable skill. It's something that I'm trying to work on more and more, because when someone comes in and they shake your hand, they're doing a free trial class. It's like, you don't really know if that person's going to stay around, but and it takes mental bandwidth to remember people's names. I would recommend, if you don't know somebody's name, find out, like ask someone else if you feel too embarrassed to ask them, or just straight up go up to them and say, hey, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Can I get your name again? And then that also shows the person that you're not afraid to, tell them, hey, like, I'm human and I need you to remind me of your name. So super important that we do remember people's names. Here, my cat's just thinking about jumping up. She's going to be back anyways. Okay. So yeah, building these personal relationships, it's very, very important to having like a tight-knit group, a well-oiled machine, and learning people's names. Try to understand people's perspectives, because the person who's working for you is not in the same boat as you. You might be already well established. Like for me, I have a business that's pretty successful. I could just run my gym and never win another competition for the rest of my life, and I would still have a pretty successful business just because how I've built it. But there's people under me who are working, or I don't want to say the word working, but training with me, who are financially not in the same place as me. They're younger. They're still working to establish a career outside of jiu-jitsu, et cetera. Everybody's different. Not everyone has access to the same resources that you do. And so when they start making requests, or they have, maybe they see the mission a particular way, even if it doesn't fall in line with the mission, you should still think about, okay, putting myself in their shoes and seeing things from their perspective. They might be going through some stuff that you don't even know about. And as a side note, when we talk about building relationships, if you see somebody who's having issues, personal issues, I think a good leader does sort of, ask about that, give support, and lend a shoulder to lean on to that person. Like one thing they don't really tell you when you get into the martial arts industry is that people will be coming up to you with personal issues. Randomly, you'll have somebody come up and say, hey, I'm getting a divorce. I need, can I talk to you? I just had this health issue, or this is happening to a family member. Like, it would just really help if I could talk to you, probably because they look up to you as the leader of you are their jiu-jitsu mentor. And so you'll find yourself in these interesting social situations that you didn't really sign up for as a martial arts gym owner. And I think it's very, very important to play that role, because that person is looking for support and guidance in that situation. And even just a couple kind words of support can really mean a lot to these people, more than you can even imagine, right? So you have to see things from people's different perspectives. Everybody's going to have a different perspective, and that's actually a good thing. As long as you can be there for them and understand where they're coming from. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It just means that you're going to do your best to see things from their perspective. Also, like, this is a huge skill for anybody who leads teams or has a big list of customers, and that's keeping people happy. And keeping people happy, just understand you're never going to make everybody happy. I've learned that, in cooking, in martial arts, you can't keep everybody happy. All right, you could do your best, but at the end of the day, it has to fall in line with the mission. Some people can't be happy. I've also realized this, and you can't force people to be happy, right? All you can do is do your best as a leader to try to satisfy the needs of everyone and kind of keep everybody working in a cohesive cohesive space, making sure that they're satisfied with whatever they're doing, and that they're getting, if they're your customer, they're getting good value out of it. If you're doing those things and you're being a good person, I think that that's kind of all they can really ask for. Building these relationships and learning their names and being that support outside of jiu-jitsu when people need it, and keeping people happy. This can really help avoid things like avoiding mutinies and mass exodus. So a mutiny is when like the whole team starts to turn on you. And I remember when I had a chef back in the Marriott days, this guy from the States, we'll say his name was Frank. This guy was very, very flamboyant, and he had some suspect cooking ability, but he was clearly like a team's leader. Like that's what he wanted to do. He played the game, he talked the talk, and that's kind of how he earned his chops as a chef. It wasn't necessarily for his like outstanding cooking ability. And there was times when I was working for this guy when, the whole kitchen would be laughing at this guy because he was just so like crazy, zany, flamboyant. But in the end, after he had left the team and moved on, I remember thinking like, man, Frank was actually like a good guy. Like he really did his best to try and keep me happy. Like I had schedule needs that allowed me to pursue a career in jiu-jitsu while I was transitioning from cooking to jiu-jitsu. And he did a really good job of meeting those needs so that I could start my business and I could get the training in that I needed to. Once he left, the guy who took over was like a complete asshole, and he didn't even really consider my particular needs to fulfill my journey in jiu-jitsu. And he started taking away things like my preferred hours and whatever. And that's when I really realized, I was like, man, Frank was actually like one of the best bosses I ever had, even if he wasn't a great chef. But there were times when Frank first started where everyone would look at this guy like, this guy's a clown, like he doesn't really know what he's doing. And the whole team started, mocking him behind his back. And there were times when people were considering a mass exodus, which is where people just up and leave and go somewhere else as a team. In a jiu-jitsu situation, I've heard of this happening where an instructor's an asshole to a bunch of people, or maybe there's unsavory business practices and then a bunch of people leave for another business. And this is obviously detrimental to you as a business person and also to your reputation. So we want to do all we can to avoid these mass exoduses and avoid mutinies where people start really turning on you. And they think that the way that you're running the operation and leading the mission is so bad that they all come to an agreement that you are basically not the right person for the job. And that is where, in the military, if there's a mutiny, that's where the leader kind of gets overthrown by the body of soldiers, and they put in a new leader. So this is something that it's not common to overthrow a leader into where the mission has rotted so much from within that everybody forgets about the mission and everybody thinks that you're the wrong person for the job. But to avoid it, reinforce these relationships, try to have personal relationships with people, and really just try to be a good person, right? And another thing that people didn't really tell me when I started opening a martial arts business is that you're not just going to be teaching jiu-jitsu and selling jiu-jitsu, making jiu-jitsu the product. In a lot of ways, you, the leader, are the product. The face of the gym. You are selling not just jiu-jitsu, but you're selling yourself. You are you're the salesman, and you are your brand. So you really have to make sure that when you do that you leave a good impression with people and that you're there for them, and just being a good, kind person. And like I said, lending an ear when people need it and giving the support when people need it is incredibly important to having that tight-knit group that stays within the vision, the mission. Try to be impartial as a leader. So, like I mentioned earlier with the idea of a mission, no one student or no one person is more important than the other, or the mission, for that matter. So if you have somebody who's a really high level competitor, and then you have somebody who's just an average Joe off the couch, like, you might invest more in the competitor because the competitor is more dedicated. They've been with you longer. They care more about jiu-jitsu. They have aspirations in jiu-jitsu. But at the end of the day, no one person is more important than the other. I don't mean to sound like a communist, but you have to look at it this way, because if people start to feel like you're playing favorites or there's nepotism within your gym, they're going to notice that, and it's not really a good look. People will start to feel unimportant. like you're favoring one person more than the other. And even though you do have to sometimes give a particular student more attention than another student, that doesn't mean that one is more valuable than the other. So being fair and impartial is super critical to maintaining integrity within the gym and maintaining a good culture where everybody feels like they have their value. If people start to feel like they're not being valued by you, they're just like another paying customer, that's when people start talking and there starts to become dissent amongst a group. And then that's a real issue, because that can lead to like I mentioned, mass exoduses and things like that. As a leader, you need to hold people accountable. So this could be somebody who's working for me, helping me with classes. Maybe they're not safe with the way that they're watching people roll. This is just an example. They're not safe when they're supposed to be supervising kids. They're like off on their phone or something when they're supposed to be watching kids roll and keeping them safe. It's very, very important that you reinforce the idea of the mission. You shouldn't be dicking around on your phone when there's kids rolling and now someone got hurt and that was because you were being negligent. Or whenever this sometimes happens, whenever you get kids helping with kids class. And I don't want to put my team on blast, because I have a group of kids from the senior kids class who help with the junior kids class, and they do a fantastic job. But it's easy for kids to want to play games with the younger kids when they're supposed to be supervising, right? If you have, let's use the example of having older kids in a supervising role against younger kids. You can't have those older kids participating when they need to be supervising. Supervising is something that takes all of your attention. And when you start participating, now you are just playing essentially. And I had that issue when I had older kids helping me with the younger kids. We'd be playing games or whatever, and they'd want to get involved. And I'd say, listen, this isn't for you. This time is for them. And if you're going to help, you have to help. You can't play, right? And that's sometimes an uncomfortable conversation that you need to have. So, or let's say I have somebody covering a class for me, and I come back and they didn't clean the mats, or they didn't lock up the gym, or they, some kind of closing practice or cleaning practice wasn't executed properly. And now you come in and you see something that is not there. Like you have to hold people accountable. That doesn't mean you have to give them shit. It just means you have to reinforce the practices that are congruent with your mission, whatever those practices are. Hey, I noticed you didn't clean the mats when you left. Thank you for covering me, first of all. But I noticed you didn't clean the mats, and this is why it's important to clean the mats. If we don't do that, we could have, infectious outbreaks, whatever. The people come in, the gym doesn't look clean. It's not good for my business. Do you understand why I said that? Again, thank you for helping me. Like, always make it like what we call a shit sandwich, where it's like the bread is like the sugar coated part, where you're like complimenting them, and then the middle part is the actual critical, productive criticism part of the speech. And that is super important to do. Is like, you have to have the guts to go to somebody and say, hey, like, you needed to do this different. Being a passive person who's afraid to correct somebody, that's not really a good trait of a leader. A leader has to be willing to have those conversations. I've had really uncomfortable situations in my business where I've had to kick people out for different reasons. I've had to kick people out because they were being too aggressive with, in a kid's situation, there are a couple of kids I've had that are like too aggressive. Like, they're kicking, they're hitting, and they just can't help themselves. And after like 2 or 3 warnings, at that point, it's time to go, because you've given them enough warnings. You've explained why we can't kick and punch. And we've explained that will result in a particular consequence, and they still doing it. This person could be dangerous. At this point, if you keep them in the program, you're doing that. You're affecting the mission. You're affecting the atmosphere in the program. And the message that it sends to people is, well, Matt will keep so-and-so in the program because they're paying his bills, but he doesn't really care if it's an unsafe thing. And at that point, it does become negligent, because what if that person hits another person after 3 warnings? Well, now at this point, it's your fault, because you are choosing to keep them within your environment and exposing them to your team. So you're kind of like a shepherd to sheep when you're a leader. And a really important thing to do as a leader is to keep your flock safe, right? You are responsible for the safety of your flock. You can't be having, people come in who are dangerous or reckless, affecting the atmosphere of the team. Another person came in, I remember, and he was like kicking people's extended legs from the guard, like kicking them in the knees and kicking them in the torso. And I remember warning him a couple times, and then one day he came in with a full-on staph infection after I already have monthly, if not weekly, reminders of keep your skin safe and be on the lookout for infections or whatever. This guy comes in with a fully infected boil on his leg and does a class. And then all of a sudden I'm like, dude, what is that? And he's like, oh, I thought it was just a scratch. It's like this big pussy looking boil on his leg, like the size of a giant coin. And I'm like, dude, like you're training with a full staph infection. And of course, everyone in the room noticed. And so this looks really, really bad as me as the leader, because I should have taken accountability for that. And I should have done like a skin check, and I didn't do the skin check. So it does fall on me. It's my program. It's my business. This is my issue. It's not his fault it is his fault, but it's technically not his fault for doing that. It's my fault as the leader for not taking ownership and making that my business. So I had to eject him from the program. It was just too much. It was too dangerous, too careless. And I remember he wanted to come back and renew his contract. And I said, I can't do it because you're dangerous and you're not really falling in line with the mission, which part of the mission is to have a clean, safe environment. And if you can't offer that, you got to go. So that's an uncomfortable situation that you have to have. I had another recent situation where one of the parents really doesn't like one of the other coaches and the coach's son. And it was a situation where I had been with this family for a couple of years, and I helped their kids get good at jiu-jitsu from day one. Like they were homegrown, but then they really started to dislike this other coach, and they couldn't handle this coach being on the mats and coaching their kid, and they started getting aggressive with me. There was actually a point where I lost a student because one of the parents was a little bit hot-headed. I lost a student because of some of his comments in an unrelated topic to this one. And it got to the point where they were starting to give me ultimatums, okay, well, if you don't remove them, then you might lose us. And that was the point where I said, okay, best of luck to you. Right. And I had to remove them from the program, which they were not happy about, but they weren't falling in line with the mission. And the mission is, if you can't play ball and understand that this is a competitive gym and that there is going to be egos and when it's a high level gym, you are going to get kids that go real hard. And if that's an issue, if we can't be cordial and we can't be as a team, then we can't be training partners. And that's just kind of what it is. And like ejecting someone that you've had in your program for a couple of years and you've built these relationships with, that is not a comfortable thing, but it was a choice that I felt that I had to make in that moment. And so these types of situations when you're a leader are always going to come up, and it's never fun. But I will say when you do remove somebody from the program who is causing issues, causing dissent, causing drama, starting trouble for you, it just instantly makes your work environment so much better once they are removed from the program. That is something that I've found over and over again. As a leader, you must hold high standards. So whether they're, for me, like the high standards that I need to hold are cleaning standards. If I'm having issues where people are getting staph and ringworm, it's like those standards need to be reinforced and even improved. If it comes down to high standards for what I teach, I only want the best jiu-jitsu. I only want to study the top coaches and athletes and bring that best information to my team. So if I have an instructor that's teaching absolute dog shit, that's obviously not in line with the mission. So I would have to hold high standards, whether somebody's not cleaning the gym effectively or not using the space effectively, not if they're covering for me, if they're not running a good class, or if they're not treating people well in a warm way as a leader, then that is something that I'm going to have to address with them. And I have to make sure that all of those standards are withheld. I've been in kitchens where, the chef really starts to not care about the standards of the food. And I even hear horror stories from my friends who are still in the culinary arts. They tell me like, oh, I came in and I'm in the juice, man. Like the last team the night team didn't set me up, which is like the constant story that we used to have being a day cook, was that the night team would just not hold. There was no standards. They wouldn't close the station properly. They wouldn't turn over their product, which means like you take the inserts and you turn it into a clean insert so that it's completely clean. Or they wouldn't set up the prep, or whatever situation it may be. If those high standards aren't met, it is up to the leader or whoever's in charge of that group of people to go to those people and, make sure that those standards are upheld. Because if you don't, it's you, the leader's fault. If that product's not there, really what should be happening is the leader should be taking extreme ownership and should be holding those standards high. The leader should not be saying, well, it's not my fault because it's not my station. It's like, yeah, but you're overlooking those people. So extreme ownership means you make it your problem and you take ownership for it. And yeah, like holding people accountable to the systems and for the day-to-day practices is just part of every single business operation. Doesn't matter if you're in cooking or in an office or running a martial arts studio. All right, another really important skill in leadership is the idea of problem solving. When I was a cook, it's funny, there's so many parallels between cooking and jiu-jitsu. It's all problem solving, right? And problem solving becomes a very, very important thing because you're going to have unforeseeable problems and variables thrown at you. And you as the leader, people are going to look to you to handle the situation in a particular way. So in a situation where it comes down to jiu-jitsu, like you have to be able to adapt to these situations. Let's say I have an idea of a class that I want to run. Like, okay, I want to do berimbolos today. It's a pretty difficult topic for a lot of people, right? A lot of people are still missing that portion of the game. Some people want to learn it. They want to invert. That's all they want to do. But there's a lot of people that can't even go upside down. And so you go into class and you're like, okay, I'm planning on doing berimbolos. And then by the time the class starts, you look around the room and you're like, these guys aren't ready for the berimbolos. Maybe we can start to work in inversions. Maybe we can take the class in a different direction, but you're going to have to adapt on the fly in certain situations. I've had to do this many times where I go in trying to teach a class and I look around, I'm like, actually, these guys don't need berimbolos. They need to do like, basic pin escapes or whatever. And so I recommend in those types of situations, always have like a backup plan or a plan C even, where I go in and I'm like, okay, this is the class that I want to teach, but I'm prepared to do something else. If I look around and I feel like we can't cover that material or a large portion of the class isn't going to be able to handle that subject, we're going to do something else instead. And you kind of always have to have a class A, B, and C just in case something like that comes up. Or in cooking, an example where we'd have to adapt on the fly would say one of the most frustrating things for a professional cook is when equipment breaks down and now you can't execute. Let's say I have to do like a banquet and I don't have access to one of my ovens. That's going to really affect how I plan my pickup times. Or let's say certain particular products didn't come in. Like, how are we going to address that problem if certain food isn't available? And I told the customer I would get this food to them and they're expecting a certain item on the menu and it's just not there. How am I going to get it? Do I need to go across the street and ask one of the other restaurants for it? Do I need to go to a different vendor? How am I going to problem solve that situation? There's always going to be changes in plans. Or maybe, you're in the middle of you're picking up a party and you go look over and one of your sauces has split. It's like, fuck, this is like an unforeseen variable because you were running around and now your sauce is split. And you have to think, okay, how am I going to either fix this sauce or I better get a new sauce on the go right now? If I can't get the sauce on the go because I'm busy, I have to delegate that task to somebody else. And really, this is where I think we could make some connections with cooking and the ecological approach. Like the ecological approach is great for adaptability because the whole eco thing is we cannot memorize things and we cannot replicate the two things the same way because there's always going to be different variables in the way. And I think that there is no truer situation than in culinary arts, because in the culinary arts, like I said, it could be an equipment breakdown. You look over and you burnt something and now you got to fix it or you got to do it again. And so if you're always looking for the perfect answer, it just doesn't exist in a lot of different, in every environment. There is no perfect answer. But if you're really good at like fixing sauces, or you've been in that situation before, you've had these situations and you're comfortable with adapting to these problems that come up, then essentially you can eco the problem and pull something out of a hat and still make it work. If you've never done that before, if you've never, let's say you have like I keep using the example of a split sauce, like a hollandaise that is split. If you don't know how to bring a hollandaise back, by the way, if you do want to bring a hollandaise back, here's the way that I've done it. Bring some heavy cream to a boil and then take it off the heat and then whisk the broken hollandaise into the heavy cream. Often you can reconstitute the sauce. Some people I know brought the hollandaise back by making a small batch of hollandaise, and then they whisked the broken hollandaise into the sabayon, which is egg yolks that have been heated and whisked over a double boiler. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. Essentially, you're whisking the broken sauce into hot fat, and that can bring the sauce back together. Now, if you don't know that, if you've never planned for that situation, you're just going to be like, fuck, I got to make a new hollandaise from scratch. And that can be a lot of extra work. So I've always gone and used the cream method. And that's been very, very effective for me when I've had some tough situations in the kitchen. But if I'd never been in that situation before, that's really going to affect how I execute the mission. And so that is where like the ecological approach, where dealing with these unforeseen variables, getting good at problem solving and adapting can really, really save your ass. In jiu-jitsu, it's similar, but you're not whisking eggs. In jiu-jitsu, it's like, okay, I've never been in this position before. I don't know where I am, but I know that I need to get my frames back to the inside, and I know that I want to recover some distance, and then I can start off balancing and go into offense, etc. Like some kind of a formula where you can dig yourself out of a bad situation and then get back into offense. Like that can't necessarily be practiced with memorizing moves. How you can execute something like that is if you've been put in bad situations over and over and over again, and then you understand, okay, I think I can still dig myself out of here, even though I'm not used to this exact position. And that's where ecological approach, I think, has a lot of validity, is just being able to problem solve and adapt in those bad situations. As a leader, try to be comfortable with ambiguity. So what does that mean? It means like, understand that things can be understood and learned in many different ways. I really recommend that the leaders and the coaches out there try to stay away from like the best way, or this is the best way to do it, or I always do it like this, like these absolute ideas of, okay, this armbar should be done this way. It's like, yeah, that's where we're starting to get into set moves, and we're not really thinking about variables or unforeseen factors that could totally change the outcome of the armbar. So you really got to think about like there might not be a best way, and to go outside of moves, there might not. We could look at teaching methodology and say, okay, well maybe the way that we've been training for years is not the most efficient way. Like it's just, that's how I learned about the eco approach. Is one of my blue belts started studying Greg Souders, and he brought it to me, and I'm like, it's a really interesting way to run a class structure, as opposed to the usual, warm up 2 or 3 moves and then rolling. Let's just do task focused games. And that was a huge thing for me. It was a huge thing for me as a leader, was to understand the ecological approach and its value. And so I had to change what I knew to be teaching jiu-jitsu after I'd done it for a couple of years, and it was very beneficial. So I took in that information rather than throwing it away and saying, no, that's never going to work. I'm the senior rank around here and you're just a blue belt. Like you should just sort of stay in line and learn the way that I want you to learn. I thought, well, no, you know what? Maybe there is multiple ways, and I'm comfortable with knowing that things can be understood in a different way, and that there isn't always the best way. We don't always get to know all the answers. You know what I mean? And that's okay. It's okay to not always have the answer. But we should never stop searching for the best way, because if you stop searching for the best way, that's where you start to believe yourself that you you know everything, and that you've already achieved all of those answers. We know the best way to do an armbar from guard. We know the best way to run a class structure. We know the best way to run a competition class or to teach a kids class. When you start thinking in those absolutist ways, you really will start shutting off information that could potentially enhance the mission and prepare you better for the outcome of the mission. As a leader, this is super important. Welcome scrutiny. So I have worked with leaders who do not welcome scrutiny. They do not welcome the exchange of new ideas, and they do not want people to test their ideas or their methods. And this is very off-putting for a room full of people who are trying to find the best outcomes. Understand that you might not know the best way. Okay. And when somebody's testing your ideas, they're not testing you. They're not attacking you. They're testing your ideas. So what they're saying is, okay, well, if your ideas are really good, I want to test it. And even it might be a white belt. It might be a blue belt. It might be a kid who is just trying to find the best way, or just trying to ask you, why do you do things a certain way? And that's not something that a leader should take personally, in my opinion. There are situations where, there's that white belt who's like a dick, and he's like, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? Well, I would just do this. Well, what if, and it's like, there is a certain point where that person does need to sort of fall in line and understand how much they don't know. But you should always be welcoming to questions and people testing your ideas and your methods, because they just want to know the best way too, most of the time. And really, if you're doing things well, you should be able to answer those questions. Like I've had instructors before that get angry when you would ask questions, and they get frustrated when you'd ask them about why they do things the way they do. Understand that no idea or method should be free of scrutiny, right? If we're not scrutinizing our ideas and our methods, we're essentially ignoring the scientific method. Like the scientific method is like, let's always try and punch holes in these theories to try and find the best way, right? This is my hypothesis. I'm going to test it out a bunch and see if I can find a better way. And you might think you have the answer for something, but then, somebody comes up and they say, well, what about this? Have you thought about looking at it from this way? And, as the leader, you can kind of take it two different ways. You can get offended and dismiss it, or you can embrace it and say, okay, well, let's test out your way and see if it works. If it works, wow, great. You've just discovered something really cool. If it doesn't work, it's like, okay, the old method really is still a really effective method. But you shouldn't like dismiss those ideas, because you never know who you're going to learn from. You can learn from anybody. I always ask for feedback and welcome input on how to improve the program, how to improve things that, the way that we're doing things. I think that that's really, really important, because you can get some valuable feedback from a lot of different people's perspective. And again, like I said earlier, gaining those people's perspectives is very, very important to building a tight-knit community, to building relationships, and to get everybody aligned with the mission. And encouraging new ideas in the room, it really will help you. It will help you build a culture where everybody is trying to bring new ideas, and that is very, very good to foster growth. It's bad to have a culture where no new ideas are being thrown around and everybody is just looking to you, the leader, to sort of spoon feed them, the best way. It's better, I think, to have people who are coming to you with new ideas and exposing new ideas and problems to you when you're asking for feedback. If you ask for feedback, you might not see problems that are happening or ways that operations can be done more effectively. And then a blue belt comes to you and says, hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way? And you're like, no, I didn't. That's actually a great fucking idea. Like I've had that happen to me multiple times. And, I put my ego aside and went, wow, I didn't notice that was something we should be doing differently. And I embraced the new way, and it's been an improvement, right? Like as the leader, you don't need to take a new idea and embrace it. If you believe that it doesn't align with the mission or the goal of the mission, then you don't have to take it, but it's important to like consider it and not dismiss it, so that person feels validated and they're not going to be afraid to bring you a new idea in the future if they think that they can do something better. Really what we're talking about here is like Kaizen mindset, where we're always trying to improve systems. There's always got to be a better way, or there could potentially be a more effective way to do something. And this will allow you, to if you have to pivot on in a particular situation and do something different to get to change the strategy of whatever the mission is, sometimes that can be necessary, and that's very, very valuable in everyday operations. So having that Kaizen mindset of like, okay, let's welcome these new ideas and let's improve our systems constantly. That's the kind of culture that I like to have in my gym. Thinking outside the box, and really welcoming those new ideas. Maybe there's a new way that you can bring in revenue, I don't know, you could have there's sometimes like what we call Pit Meadows Days, which is it's like a festival here. My gym is in a town called Pit Meadows, and that could be a new way to potentially attract customers. And thinking outside the box, a couple of years there, I had like mats set up there and we were rolling or whatever, trying to bring in customers and bring eyes on the sport within the community. Like those weird ideas, or even having like an after school program, custom gear. Like right now I'm ordering custom gear for my team where people have their names on the back. It brings them more of a team, gives them more of a team feeling. And also they feel like they're representing the team and they get to wear this cool gear. Like that's all ways that you can make extra revenue while increasing the morale of the team. So like these ideas are all over the place in business. They're, when you're working in a culinary arts industry, thinking outside the box is very important for things like development of food, plating ideas. You always have to constantly push the box, push the, we'll edit that out, Carlos. You constantly have to like adjust the way you're doing things so that you can get, you can really push the boundaries as to what is available, and new ideas are always very, very welcome in these situations. As a leader, it's very important to lead with passion. Whatever I've done in my life, it's always been passion based. So martial arts, culinary arts, I did those things not because I thought that I was going to get rich off of them, but because I really loved them and because I was passionate about teaching and learning those trades. If you lead with passion, it will trickle down to your team. Passion is contagious, and people can really appreciate somebody who's leading a team with passion, and they start to become passionate about it as well. So leaders are generally passionate and they're driven and have a vision, right? They, like we say, keep using the word, the mission. A good leader knows where the team should go, what needs to be done, and they're trying to do the best to get the team aligned with that goal and push them towards that mission. Having that vision and that passion that is like a contagion within a room, it really does build a healthy gym culture, because now everybody's getting passionate about jiu-jitsu. In the culinary arts, now everybody's getting passionate about the food. And that is where you're going to see people really put love into the food. And as we all know, love is the most important ingredient in cooking. Passion generally will lead to success. At least that's how I look at it. Like, I don't think any successful business was really created without passion and drive, because it really takes a strong leader to push that goal through and to really make sure that that mission is successful. So I always recommend, leading with passion. I have students who open gyms, and they're asking me about just typical gym owner stuff. And I always recommend, like, man, don't put the money first. Like, don't go to these cheesy marketing strategies. Always put the integrity of jiu-jitsu first, because that will just naturally lead to success. Like, if you do your job properly and you lead with passion and you teach good jiu-jitsu and you care about your students, the money will naturally come, right? If you put the money first and people come in and they're like, man, this jiu-jitsu sucks, this is dog shit, that's going to go noticed. Not to say you can't be successful, but just to say that you're going to have a group of people who are probably not aligned with the goals of what I have, which is like high level jiu-jitsu, teach the best jiu-jitsu you possibly can. I make my business successful by leading with passion. I think passion in your work, whatever it is, even if you're not a leader, it just makes your work more enjoyable and more sustainable. You'll want to do what you're doing for longer periods of time if you are passionate about that job. As a leader, you must bring out the best in others. So the time that you put into others, the people around you, is like the biggest investment you can make in somebody. Okay. If you take that extra 5 minutes after class to answer a question, people remember shit like that. And that is really important. Now you're creating a culture where people will feel, okay, I remember when Matt, stayed 10 minutes and went over like this leg lock detail with me. So that's the type of gym that we have here. So when somebody of a lower rank asks me questions, I'm not going to care too much about giving them 5 or 10 minutes of my time and answering a question for them. And then they pay it forward, and it develops this gym culture where it's like, oh, look, the leader is giving his time to people to invest in them when he doesn't even need to do that. That goes a long way. It goes farther than a lot of people think. And it builds a culture where people really lift each other up. And I think that that's the culture that I want to have. Also, as a leader, really helps people discover and exceed their potential. So like I said, if you can identify that there's particular leaders in the room that have an interest in teaching and maybe having their own gym or their own business in the martial arts industry, as a leader, I always try to help those people like find their potential and even exceed their potential. Try and lift them up, because what's the saying? High tide make all the boats float. Or I don't know how exactly that saying goes, but you understand. It's better to not just lift yourself up. It's better to lift everybody up, and then everybody improves, instead of just focusing on your own development in the gym. Focus on the development of your training partner as well, because your training partner gets better. That means you have a higher level training partner. That means you get better. It's like a symbiotic relationship where everybody gets better. Very, very important. Aim for mutual success in the mission of the team. Don't just aim for like your own success. I would say if I was a competitor, competitors are selfish and they have to be selfish to compete at a high level. A competitor is not necessarily a leader. A leader, on the other hand, should wish and strive for the success of everyone. All right, let your team lead. So very, very important that we let our team lead and make sure that we ask for help when needed. So if I have people working under me, I don't want to micromanage the way that they do things. They might do things differently than me. And at some point, it's important to give them the independence and the ability to do that, even if it's a way that's different from your own. As long as it's effective, just show me that it's effective, and you can run it however you want, right? As long as you're kind to people and you're effective with what you teach, I'm going to let you do that. And asking for help when needed, like if you're getting overloaded with things and you need help, I think it's a good thing to ask people for that support. Don't be embarrassed when you have to ask somebody for support. If you're the leader, a lot of the time that can still be very, very beneficial. That allows you to build other leaders and give opportunity to them, and it gives you more time to do what you need to do as the leader, overlooking the whole operation. So if you need somebody to teach a kids class, or if you need somebody to take over cleaning duties at the gym or something like that, obviously make it worth their while. Make sure that they feel like they're getting something out of it as well, but that will give you more time to do the things that you need to do as the leader. It's a long-term investment working with people and letting your team lead, because these people could potentially become your employees, or people who are very, very close to you that help you run day-to-day operations within the gym. And helping building other leaders is something that I always focus on when I'm an instructor, all the way down to like the kid level, because like I said earlier in the episode, I have kids who come in and they want to help teach the younger kids. And so I see that drive and that passion, and like, I want to foster that. I want to make sure that they feel comfortable in that leadership role, because who knows, those kids might work for me one day. Those kids might go on to have a gym with their own students one day, and they'll be leaders within their gym. And so when you build other people up and give them opportunities to lead, it really, really can be beneficial for them and for you. Again, mutual success is very important. And when you have other leaders helping you, your team's ideas, it gets more diverse, right? You see things from more perspectives, and generally, as long as it's, falls in line with the mission, it's generally always a net positive thing. Let's talk about communication. This is actually one of the most important skills of a leader, is having good communication skills. Now, just as a disclaimer, I will say having open lines of communication can sometimes be exhausting. So right now, the example I'm going to use is I'm ordering custom gear from a manufacturer in Pakistan. And it's like anyone who orders gear, I assume if you're a gym owner who's dealt with gi manufacturers, it's pretty fucking exhausting, because you have to make sure that everything comes in the way that you want it. There's a lot of back and forth. You want to get the gear in as soon as possible, but it takes time to run through. Maybe you got to get samples, and you get the samples and they're not the way you want. And then you get the second samples and, oh, this is a problem as well. And you got to constantly be in communication with this person, letting them know every little thing. If you don't do that, the overall product suffers, and then people get a piece of gear that they don't like, and then they're never going to buy gear off you again, right? I've gone through a couple of gi manufacturers before. My last guy was just like complete airhead, out to lunch, fucked me over a couple of times, made some stuff that wasn't good. And in the end, I had to get rid of him. And I have to have those open lines of communication where I'm saying, a lot of these guys are honestly pretty dumb. They're just not like, they don't have a lot of common sense when it comes to making gear. And like, you need to keep those communications open and say, no, I want it done exactly like this, like explicitly every little detail you have to think about. And then, let's say you got like 30, 40 people who want custom gear. Like now it's up to you to take their order, and give that information to the manufacturer and make sure that you see it through so that everything is exactly how the customer wants. I'm not going to lie. It's a huge fucking job. And then all the gear comes in and, you got to put away all this stock gear in your inventory, which is another pain in the ass. So it's like, really having that open communication with those people is fucking exhausting, and it is absolutely critical to making sure that the product is on time and that it is exactly how the customer wants it. Communication, like, okay, let's step away from the gi manufacturer for a while. Let's talk about communication with your students and your coaches. It is important for the flow of ideas and criticisms to come your way in your day-to-day operations. So like if somebody has an issue with another student or another parent, it's important that you have those communications open and that you're willing to have those conversations. If you're going to ignore those conversations and neglect them, you're probably going to see a lot of people leave your program. So it's really, really, as the leader, like having those communications open is critical to managing these social interactions with people. A lot of the time there will be customers under you that do not like each other. And I've had that happen multiple times, and you kind of have to toe the line as the leader. Okay, guys, can we all get along? And yes, I see it from your perspective and I see it from your perspective as well. But at the end of the day, it's all about the mission. And if we can't follow that mission, then, we're out of here. Like I need a room where people get along and they don't hate each other. If they hate each other and they start giving ultimatums, now, something's got to give. One party's got to go. A breakdown in communication will really lead people to like question you as a leader because the responsibility falls on you. So, I'll give an example. One of the old instructors I used to have, this guy, he would usually get somebody else to teach the kids class when he wasn't there. But there would be times I remember where I'd come in and one of the dads on the spot just had to start teaching class. And I come in, I'm like, yo, where's so-and-so? And he's like, oh, he's in vacation. And he didn't tell anyone that he needed classes covered. What? Like you went on vacation? This is the gym owner, my first instructor, Don. It's like, okay, so Don went on a vacation and didn't get anyone to cover the classes. And so one of the parents just jumped in and started teaching. Like that's fucked up. That just shows a clear lack of care and attention from the leader, because the leader was the one who's supposed to get the class covered if he can't make it. Like whenever I go on a vacation, it's a fucking pain in the ass because I got to get all my classes covered. I don't want people showing up to the gym and nobody's there to teach class. That looks super bad on me. And people will start thinking that I'm just like, that I'm just out to lunch and I'm not prioritizing covering the class. And so, yes, this is an issue when you run a business, is how are you going to get coverage when you go away? Another thing would be like, my old chef, Frank, for example. I remember times when he would just fuck off in a critical moment and let us just leave us in the shit to solve the problem. And then the problem's like 99% of the way solved. And he'd come in and be like, okay, guys, how can I help now? And it's like, well, we've already done, we already ecoed the shit out of this problem and fixed everything. And now you're almost like trying to take credit for it by being like, okay, how can I help? Like I contributed. But really, that leader entirely just left his team high and dry. And you're the one who had to come up with it like that. There was no communication. Okay, we need this. This is an issue. I need you to fix this. He just like disappeared. And then he comes back and wants to help at the very end. So really making sure as the leader that like you're communicating to your team effectively is very, very critical. operations suffer if you don't be a good communicator with your team. Let's say I have a couple of students with ringworm, right? Or staff. And I have people coming up to me being like, hey, I saw so-and-so training with staff or ringworm. I know of people who've come from gyms where they're like, yeah, the last guy really didn't even care. And he just said, just cover it up and you can train. Like, that's super reckless, super negligent for the gym owner to say that, especially like there might be students that have loved ones with like compromised immune systems and things like that. And now you're bringing home staph bacteria. That's really, really fucking bad. So if somebody comes to me and says, okay, like I think I have ringworm, immediately I start thinking, okay, I got to start increasing the cleaning practices. Maybe I need to add an extra cleaning session in between particular classes. Maybe I need to think about the cleaning solution I'm using. We got to start doing skin checks. I got to have open communications in the group chat. By the way, everybody needs a group chat. Every gym owner should have a group chat where all the members are, where they can make mass communications to that particular community. As a leader, I have to go in that group chat and remind everyone, okay, guys, skin check tonight. Make sure you check your skin before you come in. We're going to need to check everybody's skin. Please make sure you're checking your skin before and after class. Please bring a towel. Please shower after class right away. And then just reiterating this so that it's almost like a broken fucking record, because a lot of people will just ignore these requests, and you just have to keep reminding them, hey, check your skin before you come into class today. Have those open communications. Hey guys, I'm showing you that I'm doing the best that I can as a leader to make sure that we avoid infections. I need you guys to do this so that, the mission, part of the mission is having a clean, safe environment to train in. And everybody needs to get on board with that, because if you're just coming in and covering up your ringworm, but you're still training because you don't want to miss training, that's a very, very selfish move, because now we have an outbreak. Other people have ringworm now. Other people have to miss class now, and that will affect your bottom line. That will affect, maybe people will start leaving and going to other gyms. That's also a very real possibility, especially if they sense that the leader doesn't give a fuck that there's, there's skin infections going on. Okay, so we're almost done here. Another really, really important trait of a leader is to show transparency. So don't be afraid when you're to admit when you're wrong, and don't be afraid to like level with the people in front of you and be human. Don't try to be, just because you're a black belt. Maybe you're a black belt, maybe you're not. I'm just saying hypothetically, just because I'm a black belt, that doesn't mean that I'm like a godly person. I'm just a normal person who's a nerd about jiu-jitsu. But I get nervous for competitions. I think it's important to like tell the kids, hey, like I get scared too. When you talk to your students who are about to compete, like, hey, it's okay to get nervous. That's part of this. I'm wrong. Sometimes I can be wrong about certain things. Sometimes I have questions that I don't have answers to, and I don't try and, I can give my best opinion of what I think the answer is in that moment, but it's also okay to say, I don't have the answer, and it's okay to not know. And I'm going to do my best as the coach to try and find the answer. But in this particular situation, I'm not sure. I haven't seen that position before. Like, be transparent in that way, because it shows your team and your community that you are just another person and that you can be wrong. It builds trust. These people will now start to trust you more, because it's making you mortal. It's putting you on a human level, and they can relate to things like that. You are not, just because you are a black belt does not mean you have all the answers. It does not mean that you know the best ways. As we discussed earlier, be as fair as possible and admit when you're wrong. And like, especially during social conflict, where, it might be like two parents arguing with each other or two students not liking each other, you have to be fair. You have to be impartial. You can't take one person's side because you favor them more than the other. Again, what I said earlier, everybody is, I don't want to sound like a communist again, but everybody is equal in terms of importance. Everybody should be heard. Everybody's position in the gym is valid, and it shouldn't matter. Rank really shouldn't matter. Every person has, the same validity to be in your gym. That doesn't mean that everybody can stay in your gym. Obviously everybody has to fall in line with the mission, but everybody, not one student is more important than the other, essentially. So you have to be fair and impartial. especially when two people are coming with you with gripes. It's like, okay, how are we going to navigate through this situation? How are we going to like keep these lines of communication open and sort of eco our way through this where everybody feels validated and happy and we can move on as a team? And if we can't move on, might be time to look for a new team for that person. Last thing is lead by action. So I spoke about leading with passion earlier and how passion is contagious, how it trickles down and builds a strong gym culture. But leading by action, understand that actions speak louder than words. So like people, if you are saying, you know, these are the standards, uphold these particular standards, but then you go and break those standards, people look at you and say, this guy's got no integrity. He doesn't even, you know, he's not even holding his own standards. So why would I try and hold standards for this individual? Like, why would I do these day-to-day practices when I don't even see the leader do those things? So people will question the integrity of you and your standards if you don't uphold those own standards. So it's important to like lead by action, right? Make sure that you set a good example for how you like things to be in the gym, how people should be treated. You know, if you're an instructor who hates tapping to lower ranks and you start refusing to tap, people are going to start to do that too, because they're going to start to think, well, it's not okay to tap. I never see my coach tap. You know, he let his leg pop instead of tap. It's like, well, now you're going to get in a gym culture that is egotistical where people do not want to tap, and that is not what you want. So the type of energy that you put into the gym and the type of example that you lead, that's what you're going to get out of your gym culture. And that's important to understand. All right, guys, that is the episode, The Foundations of Leadership. I really, really hope that you got something out of it. Please like, share, subscribe. If you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. If you have comments or suggestions on leadership, please add them in the bottom because I'd love to hear them. If you have show ideas or suggestions for topics you want me to discuss, feel free to email me or contact me. The links of contact, Instagram, my email is at the bottom in the show notes. Guys, I'm out of here. Remember, the Everyday Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.